Hi everyone, thank you for joining our August national webinar, Crucial Conversations for Realtors, How to Help Your Clients Make Good Decisions Fast, hosted by our Oregon broker, Heather Tenbrook. We have attached a handout to your go-to meeting panel under the handout section for you to follow along with during the webinar. Allison James Estates and Homes is a nationwide brokerage which offers 100% commission and 100% support. Why split your commission if you don't need to? You've earned it all, so shouldn't you keep it all? Our goal at Allison James is to always give back to our agents by providing education, training sessions, live webinars, live events, and full broker support with the most up-to-date tools and technology available. We are always looking for new tools and ways to be able to provide them to our agents at a lower or discounted price, so you can keep your hard-earned money for the important things in life and the people you love. With plans starting at just $35 per month, we have plans that cater to agents of all levels of production. And as Allison James continues to grow, we will be providing more of these free tools to help you grow your business. Allison James Estates and Homes is ranked among RealTrends' top 20 independent brokers in America. We currently have over 1,100 agents and are growing every day. Thank you to all of the outside agents who have joined us today. We feel that training should be free, and we welcome you to join on any of our upcoming webinars or live events. Today's webinar is sponsored by our preferred lender, Movement Mortgage. And I would now like to introduce Shelley Hoyseth, Senior Loan Officer with our preferred lender, Movement Mortgage. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning, Victoria. Good morning, real estate agents across the country. I hope it's a beautiful day for you this morning. It is a beautiful day in sunny California. Not to rub it in if it's not beautiful where you are. Anyway, with the theme being how to help your clients make good decisions fast, I thought one thing that I'm seeing from top agents that I work with is they are quick to introduce their team to their clients. And when I say introduce, I mean just in conversation to be talking about me as their lender, maybe talking about their escrow officer that they like, or even a tax person. You know, as you're in conversation with the client and they have questions, or, you know, what about this or that, it's great to just say, oh, you know, Shelley would really be able to help you with that. To know the Movement Mortgage system, let them know that they'll have a no surprises at closing pre-approval, and when they find out that they can have a fully underwritten pre-approval up front and be able to write offers with a loan commitment letter in hand, they get really excited about that, because there's nothing worse, as you know, as an agent, than having a deal fall apart a few days before closing due to a lending issue. So one thing I like to do is to, when I'm talking with my clients, I ask them about their agent. How did you meet Juja, or how did you meet Kim, and really just start having a conversation where I can instill faith back with their agent as well, because I realize that a lot of times we're building the relationship from a Zillow lead, or, you know, someone that just wanders into an open house, and to be able to show them that you've got a solid team where we really support each other and know each other well and have each other's back, I think will help build the relationship. I know Kim Garari here in my area is just so good about doing that with her clients, with me, just instilling. She'll say, oh, well, Shelley would do this, or Shelley would have the appraisal order, or Shelley would do this, and I'm doing the same with her, and that makes clients feel safe and secure, I think, to know that they've got a team that works together with a common goal. So that's my 2 bits on that, which Heather will be sharing a little more on in a few minutes. For the product of the month, I wanted to bring up reverse mortgages, or you might hear them called a HECM, H-E-C-M loan. There's a lot of confusion about reverse mortgages and a lot of misinformation. So I just want to let you guys know as agents that this is actually a really great product that is able to be used as a purchase transaction. Most people don't realize that. So just as a snippet, the highlights, if a client is over the age of 62 years old, and they've got approximately 50% down, or they have enough equity in their current home to be able to move over about 50% of their equity to a new purchase, they basically could get a loan and not have to make any payments for the rest of their life on that house. It's a normal FHA mortgage. I mean, it's a HECM, so it's not a regular forward mortgage, but it's an FHA insured mortgage, just like any other FHA mortgage, meaning there's a lien against the property, but the bank is not taking title or taking over ownership of the home. So as the years go by, they estimate it up to, I think, 99 or 100 years. And if for some reason the market crashes and they owe more than the home is worth when they pass away, or when they, vacate the home, then it's no big deal. It goes back to the bank, and there's no recourse to the borrower or the heirs at all. If there's equity in the house when they sell or move out, then they sell it, pay off the mortgage like any other lien, and take the equity. So really, it's a great program for the borrower. The only downside for a reverse mortgage is to their heirs, because the payments or the interest is coming off of the equity of the home. So it does eat into the inheritance a bit, but as a daughter that has a mom that lives about an hour and a half away from me, I would love for her to take her free and clear house and buy something close to me and do a small $100,000 reverse mortgage. And I don't care about digging into my future inheritance sometime 20, 30 years down the road. I would like to enjoy having my mom close by. So that's just my 2 bits. Don't forget about a reverse mortgage, and if you have any questions about them, let me know, because I'd like you to be able to feel comfortable when you're working with clients over the age of 62 to be able to offer them another solution, another way that they can either get the home of their dreams, move in closer to their family, or do things that they think they can't afford because they don't want to have a mortgage payment. So that's my 2 bits for the day. I'm going to pass it back off to Victoria.
Thank you, Shelley. And everyone, you can contact Shelley directly at area code 760-484-2150. If you would like more information about Allison James Estates and Homes, please feel free to contact Alicia Aratari in our National Growth and Development Department at area code 941-677-2544, or by email at joinus@ajicorporate.com. And with that being said, I would now like to introduce Heather Tenbrook. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be bringing you this presentation today. It has come up a lot in our busy market, and I think it's a great way to help each other and provide some great tools. So today we'll be discussing ways to ease your clients through the buying and selling process by providing them with tools to make educated and prepared decisions and eliminate the surprises. Knowing your audience and being a good liaison is crucial. So knowledge and expertise in many areas of the real estate transaction helps our clients be better and smarter buyers and sellers. So today we'll cover conversations with buyers and sellers. Sorry, I have to say okay to having the mouse control here. Sorry, just 1 second. Victoria, I don't see that.
You should just be able to click on the screen, Heather. We'll let you. And scroll down.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep, got it. Thank you. Okay, so today we'll be discussing conversations with buyers, conversations with sellers, how to manage expectations, and of course how to keep deals together. One of the great things about real estate is, of course, the relationships that we form with our clients, and just to be successful in a transaction doesn't mean just a closed deal. So let's discuss managing those expectations and providing these tools to give our clients a minimum of stress. So let's get right down to it, and this is one of my favorite little guys. being prepared, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, you know, with the lending process, so that there are no surprises. We don't want to be a by-the-way broker. We'd rather want to approach each and every deal like an Eagle Scout. Being prepared and helping your client's preparation is key to the success of your real estate transaction. Carrying with you all your knowledge badges, the tools in your toolbox, and being the source of the source and not the source. Being good partners with your lender, your inspector, etc. So, I clicked too many times. So, conversations with buyers before you start even showing homes. You know, sometimes we get so excited we want to just go look at properties. You know, that maybe you get a call from an old friend or, you know, a referral from a past client, and you just want to get going on that, and you just want to go start looking at properties because it's exciting and they're excited. But by now we should all have a system, and if you don't have a system, I'll give you a few great ideas today. So the system, a system of gathering information, perhaps it's a checklist, an interview if you will, to assist you in that first search process. One of the most important questions is how you'll be paying for your new home. But also somewhere in that initial conversation should be the crucial question, what is the most important thing to you? Many brokers fly through maybe a transaction and they've never really honed in on that one thing. Sometimes it's a couple things, but with a lot of buyers and sellers there is that one thing, that most important thing. Many different answers and scenarios. If you can accomplish that one thing, then all the other successes during the transaction could be just icing on the cake. A successful transaction, like I said, isn't just the closing, it's the relationship building along the way, the trust building. So preparing, say, a buyer questionnaire if you don't already have one, meeting with your clients in person and discussing all of those nuances, having a list of frequently asked questions, which is also an example on the flyer that's attached there for you to download. The A to Z of the buying process, say a copy of a contract, an addenda to review and discuss before you even write an offer, giving them something tangible. For example, a nice tri-fold brochure with those frequently asked questions, things to do, things not to do, things that most likely will happen, and an A to Z, and when I talk about an A to Z, I mean like a very detailed, typical timeline of a transaction, the very first thing that could happen and the very last thing that could happen. And sometimes we're very general and we're very vague when we first meet with clients, but I think it's crucial and important to be specific with them and giving them something to look at and refer back to. So on this trifold you could include the frequently asked questions, things to do, things not to do, and then you could also include a list of inspectors, attorneys, contractors, lenders. This can go a long way through the process. Have fun with it. Discuss with them the list, making sure they know up front all the things that could happen in a transaction. So if it does, they're prepared. Giving them that something of value, they'll be able to make good decisions. Again, it can save time later if they've already made decisions with you ahead of time. For example, about the inspection and repairs and what happens if the appraisal comes in low. Later on, when those things come up, there are very specific and sometimes urgent timelines. And rather than feeling pressured and up against those timelines to decide what they can live with or trying to understand the process, if you've had these conversations with them in the beginning, it'll go a long way to help them be smarter and make educated decisions. And as much as we know our lender partners prepare the buyers and discuss with them very important things through their buying process, we can't always assume that the buyer has retained it all. So dealing with finances can be very stressful, and sometimes they forget certain and very important details. So before you list, you know, a lot of us, again, we have our list kits, right? Our list packets, our you know, gathering of information, and sometimes we have all of these things to give to our clients and we don't discuss it. So having these conversations, discussing the process with your sellers can go a long way in saving a psychological breakdown when you're in the middle of a stressful situation. And it's not it's not a good transaction, you know, if you've assumed. You know, we all know that word, assume. Regardless of how many times someone has sold a house, it's crucial to prepare them for what happens before they list that house. Maybe their last transaction was completely different, and as we all know in real estate, every transaction is different. Every house is different. Every situation is different. Every family is different. Every loan process is different. So sometimes you'll be surprised to find out what the most important thing to a seller is. It could be that they want better communication than their last transaction. It could be something as simple as, please don't text me, please don't email me, call me, let's talk about it. It could be that they want to meet in person to discuss contracts. It could be that they want you to be present for showings because of something that occurred in the past. It could be that they need to stay in the house for 3 days after closing to ensure their funds are deposited. Whatever that is, you won't really know unless you ask. And many times they don't even know what to ask without seeing a list of frequently asked questions. Again, you can make this fun. We know the lingo. We know the acronyms. We know what, say, an REO is, or a TRID is, or, you know, all those different things that we take for granted that we know. We can't assume that our clients understand all of that. So it's important to give them a list, and sometimes a glossary, a definition list. What does closing mean? You know, when do I get my keys? Things like that. Giving them a copy of the purchase contract and addenda in their list packet, along with a list of common things found on home inspections, for example. We get this from one of our local favorite inspectors, and you can meet with your inspectors directly about partnering up on some marketing materials. It's a great tool to make smarter clients and help them make smarter, no-surprise decisions. There's a lot to remember, and they're also dealing with the emotions of this process. So we are there to simplify and liaison, not to add to their emotional roller coaster that is the buying or selling of a home. Too many times I've seen clients dig their heels into the ground because it was a surprise that a buyer even asked for repairs. An appraisal came in low, or a buyer lost their financing. So explaining all of these scenarios to both sides is crucial. Explain the entire process. Tell the sellers about the buyer process. Tell the buyers about the listing process. I think, you know, one of the best things that you can do with a seller is to explain how a buyer is going to be looking for property. So my partner Gina and I, you know, we share a lot in those duties, you know. So when she's explaining to a buyer about the process, she's not only talking to them about what's going to happen to them, but she's also talking to them about what's going to happen to the seller. And I do the same thing with sellers. I want to make sure that the sellers understand what a buyer's going through. It'll go a long way. So things you absolutely should not do. I'm sure all of our friends at Movement Mortgage can understand this more than most of us. That there are things that buyers absolutely should not do during the process, like going to buy a new car, or taking out, you know, a new credit card. Assuming, you know, that everything is just going to go smoothly, even if it does, preparing them for the worst. As much as we don't want to have these tough conversations in the beginning, we kind of have to. There's nothing worse than finding out through the process that the buyer lost their financing because they did something that they shouldn't have done, and we could have told them that in the beginning. So again, we can't assume that they've retained everything when they're sitting down, you know, with their lender talking about, you know, their finances. So in this editable list, handout that we've provided for you, it is a template. You can make it your own. You can add photos, logos, clip art, headers, you know, however you want. Take some of those items out, use what you like, add what you like, and make it fun. Giving people sort of the worst thing that could happen in the beginning is so much better than having it when it happens. This list is great for early discussions with your buyers and sellers because many times they don't know. How many conversations have you had nearing your close date about actually what closing means or what signing means? discussing these do's and don'ts in the beginning, and they'll feel so much smarter at the end. You can also add your own list of commonly used terms, like I said, a glossary to this handout for your own state or region. A glossary is a great tool for your first meeting. It can also be something they can have in their packet throughout the whole time. So, you know, sometimes clients don't ask questions because they don't want to sound dumb, and we don't want them to feel dumb. So if they have that list in their hands and they forget what a certain, you know, word or concept process means, referring to that throughout can really help. And then they can make it fun too. And I've had clients say, I looked at my list and I felt so smart. So many buyers don't understand, and we cannot, and sellers, and we cannot assume that they you know, even know the questions to ask. So regarding the frequently asked questions, you can look at that handout as you like. It's an amazing and fun tool for your clients because they, like I said, they can refer to it at any time. Keeping the surprises and stressful situations to a minimum. For example, giving them the answers to this, it makes it kind of a fun little homework assignment. So if you'll notice on the handout, I don't have the answers. So, you know, maybe they make notes on your list. Maybe you provide them with a couple lines after each question and make it fun. And they can, you know, sometimes I've seen people give calendars so they can actually have a piece of paper that has a 60-day calendar on it, and they can mark their own tasks and duties on there. And giving them, you know, some homework in a succinct and easy way, again, goes a long way with the process. Questions like, when do I get my keys? When do I need to be out of my house? What does broom swept mean? Should I schedule the moving truck for the day of closing? Is the closing date on my contract guaranteed? We all know that isn't the case. How much earnest money is customary? What happens after the inspection? Who will do repairs? What if the seller says no to repairs? What if the appraisal comes in low? What are the deal breakers? What are my deal breakers? You know, as a buyer or a seller, you might not have even talked about what the deal breakers are. I like to kind of mention the 80-10-10 rule as much as possible. And this came from an amazing speaker, Terry Watson. And he talks about the 80-10-10 rule with both sides. If a client isn't prepared for, you know, finding, for example, their, you know, dream house on the very first day, but they find something that 80% of that they love, 10% they can live with, and 10% is fixable, then you have your 100%. And we'll talk about that some more as we go through. I think preparing people, like I said, for the worst is a scary thing for brokers. You know, sometimes we don't want to have those tough conversations. We don't want to add to any emotional stress by dumping them with this whole long list of, you know, horror stories. But there's a way to do that in an easy and fun way so it doesn't scare them. And then when none of that stuff happens, you know, then you really shined in your job. But also you can shine by saying, yes, we discussed this in the beginning, and great, you're prepared for this. And then it's not a huge surprise. Time and time again, problems occur when there's been little to no discussion about what could happen. For example, like I said, if your buyers find their dream house on the very first day and they still want to go shopping, they miss their opportunity, you need to talk about that. Use your checklists. It's very common that a buyer will find their dream house. Maybe it's the very first house you go look at, and you've then spent 3 weeks looking at other properties, and that very first house is gone. For sellers, things that will probably happen, I think, you know, one of the most important things for a seller to understand is that it may not be the very first offer that is the buyer that ends up closing on their house. Time and time again, we see sellers digging their heels into the ground because, you know, they've lost a deal and they have to start over. But if they're prepared, you know, and you explain to them that it could take, you know, 3, 4, I've seen it happen, you know, on short sales. The 9th person in line and backup ends up closing on the house. So, you know, these are conversations, again, that you want to have with your clients. Preparing them for a little trial and error, preparing them for a lowballed offer so that they don't get emotionally offended. Maybe they've overheard a conversation. This is another thing about not letting your buyers have loose lips. Preparing them that, you know, maybe a baby cam got left on and you're talking about how, you know, horrible the wallpaper is in the bathroom, and you don't know what that's going to do to a seller. It might, you know, give them an emotional response that you're not prepared for. So talk about these things. They can be an uncomfortable conversation or they can be fun. Again, using your handout and having these long discussions and meetings before you list really, really will help to eliminate the struggle in the middle and the end. So when to be a hero? Remembering that you are there to save the day, and that with preparation and with ease and leaving the emotional cape at home and putting your factual cape on when you're meeting your clients. If you've prepared them for the worst and nothing stressful happens, then they know they've breezed through. If they've prepared for the worst, then sometimes what they thought was the worst thing could happen, doesn't seem so bad. If you tell your buyers and sellers that the close date will most likely change more than once, then they aren't cursing you when it does and you're the hero. You do that one thing, that one most important thing that they told you in the very beginning, and all the other little things are just basically becomes icing on the cake. And we all know, like I said, loose lips sink ships. So there are ways to be a hero, being the liaison, being the source of the source and not the source. Just because you might know what the city planner office is going to say regarding building a shop on the property that they love, does not make you the city planner office. You need to make sure that they are gathering their own data. A lot of clients assume that we are the end-all be-all and the source of all that information, but we have to remind them that we are not the inspector, we're not the city planner office, we're not a lender, we're not an appraiser, we're not a contractor, and being the source of that information and not, and the source of that information and not just giving them firsthand that information. For example, I would never assume that I would understand their, what loan that they are getting, even if they've told me it's conventional. That doesn't mean that I know all the nuances of that loan. And just because somebody's getting, maybe they're taking money out of a current property and it is a home equity line of credit and then they're paying cash. If they tell you that they're paying cash and they have to pull money out of somewhere else, then you haven't had that conversation with people, and then you're not the hero. And if you just assume that you understand, the other part of it is we don't want to make someone else look bad in the process of making ourselves look good. Just because you might have done a deal with that broker before doesn't mean that you can speak on their behalf about how well or how badly they might perform, and that it goes against our entire fiduciary responsibility to our clients and to each other. So be careful when you are also passing your opinion and also responding in an emotional way. We are here to concentrate on factual and material responses rather than feeding an emotional response. And just because you have a mortgage on your own house, even as a realtor, and you've done maybe hundreds or thousands of deals, or maybe you've done 5, just because you have a mortgage on your own house does not make you an expert in the lending process. So we've gone over some general and some basics, and I'd really encourage you to take advantage of that frequently asked question handout. And if you have any ideas and you want to share it, I'd love to make that part of the AJI University marketing tools, and would love everyone's input. So feel free to email me or Victoria, and we can put that together as a useful tool for everyone. So now I would love to open it up for questions and any feedback, any stories, anything that you would like to touch on, maybe success stories or war stories that we can share with each other. So questions are open.
And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions portion of your GoToMeeting control panel. Also, if anyone is wondering where to access the handout that Heather was referencing during the webinar, it is available on the control panel as well under the handout section. So if you click on that, you will be able to download it onto your computer.
And Heather, I would just like to second what you said, and I really appreciate you emphasizing, you know, not speaking on behalf of the loan and the loan product, because, you know, I have a lot of agents that will ask me, how much is the payment, how much is the rate, how does this program work, how do these, and I obviously I like agents to have a good general idea of kind of when a product might work or not, and to kind of have a general understanding. But as far, I would just really caution agents to never quote rate. You know, don't even bother to say, oh, well, I saw today rates were 3.3 or rates were, you know, because you have no idea what might be going into the calculations for that particular borrower. And the second you put a number in their head, all of a sudden now that's what they want, that's what they expect, and they don't understand that they're buying a condo, or that their credit score is 699 instead of 700, or that, you know, their best friend put more money down than they did, or, you know, they're talking to their friends and family. So always just say, hey, that's a great question for your loan officer. That's a great question for Shelley. And if you've got a good loan officer on your team, they're going to do the same for you, because believe me, we get the same kinds of questions. When should I have my inspection? Should I remove my contingency? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I really try to defer back to the expertise of the realtor, just because I don't want to step on any negotiating conversations you might be having with the other agent or what have you, and mess anything up. So it's just, I guess a good way to say it is stay in your lane.
Yes, and I so agree, Shelley, and we talk about this a lot from a legal standpoint, and one of our attorneys in Oregon, real estate attorneys, who's on the board, the Oregon Association of Realtors, and also on the committee who writes our forms, he stresses stay in your lane, you know, stay in your area of expertise. We all have our specialties, right? And I don't want to wear, I already wear a million hats, right? I don't need to wear 1,000,005. Let's let the lenders be the lenders. And you know, I think what happens a lot too is that we're having these conversations with our clients about the lending process, but we're forgetting to ask some of the very important questions, like, what if we find your dream house and it's not financeable? What does that look like? Have you had a conversation with your lender about other, you know, financing options? Have you discussed a 403k? Have you, you know, is that even in the realm? Should we not even look at those? Are you, you know, at your absolute max here? How much room do we have? Are you going to have, what if the seller says no to doing repairs and this is your dream house? How are we going to make this work? And that's, that's crucial to discuss, you know, throughout the process, and to have that relationship with your lender, because they're the only ones who are going to really be able to tell you. A client might say, oh yeah, I have $10,000, you know, in the bank, but maybe they're putting that $10,000 down at the closing table, and then they don't have money after the fact for repairs. And there are lots of options that are, you know, that change state by state. For example, on the California forms, a request for repair also includes a seller's response to be, okay, well, no, we won't do this, but we will do this. In Oregon, we only have, okay, a buyer's repair addendum. It doesn't give the options for a seller credit. Or what if you already have closing costs coming from the seller? Then you can't, you know, these are things you can't assume that a lender is going to understand, or that a buyer is going to understand the process. If they're already getting closing costs and then the seller wants to credit, we can't do that in Oregon, you know. So, you know, make sure you understand as a realtor and the process, but leaving the specifics to the experts. And you know, we've seen too many deals fall apart based on a lack of attention to this very thing and staying in your expertise. You know, and I think that relationship between realtor and lender has improved, you know, certainly over the years. You know, the partnership, the camaraderie. You know, we've seen so many changes in the financing world and in the real estate world and in the market that it's so important to have those relationships and build that trust with your lender partners and your inspectors. And yeah, Shelley, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Well, and one thing that you brought up, another good tip, because oftentimes the realtors are the ones involved in this process, and that's the earnest money deposit, the upfront deposit. One thing that you can be sure and ask your client is to make sure if they just hand you a personal check, or they just hand you, because you know they try to do that often. I highly recommend that you send them directly to escrow or to wherever who is holding the trust, and you actually do not accept a check. But you know, I'll leave that to the brokers to decide. But if they are handing you a check, or when you're discussing the earnest money deposit, it's really important to ask them to double check with their lender as far as the source of the funds, to make sure that the earnest money deposit is coming from a verified account. So in other words, what happens sometimes is we go to verify earnest money deposit, and the client says, oh, well, I wasn't able to transfer from this account or whatever, so I just had my dad write the check, which, you know, then we can work it around with a gift. Or I've even seen, and don't, you know, I've even, well, my agent just fronted it for me or something. Oh my gosh, not only is that illegal, but you know, make sure that you remind your client when you say, hey, it's time for your earnest money deposit. This phrase, if you just say, please make sure your earnest money deposit comes from verified funds that your lender says are allowed. So
okay, so that's a really good thing to add to our list, things that you should or should not do. And one of the things that I have on there is no David Copperfield deposits. That comes direct from Terry Watson. You know, we had a buyer actually send us a photo of dollar bills, not $1 bills, but like, you know, $100 bills laid out in between his mattress and his box spring. So you see his arm, he's lifting the mattress, and he takes a picture and sends it. It's like, no, I can't take that.
Well,
but I think
that just came up. Someone did cash, and when we went to verify their earnest money deposit, you know, they weren't using the funds that we had, they used cash, and now we don't have any way to verify that they actually made that deposit. And you know, people say, well, I'm saving it on my own, which yes, what's logical and smart as far as having envelopes for budgets isn't necessarily what gets us through the Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA guidelines, you know.
Right.
So just really encouraging them to always just double check. Have you talked with your lender about that, or whatever? Because that is something that can cause a paper trail headache. It's almost always a workaround, but you know, it's just a paper trail headache, and we want to eliminate as much of that as possible.
Sure, and we want to eliminate habits, you know, and bad habits. So, you know, again, regardless of how many homes a buyer has purchased in their lifetime, you know, that's another. They might say, "Oh no, I already know, I already understand." Well, let's talk about that. Let's make sure, because times have changed, things, you know, rules have changed, and you know. There's nothing worse than having somebody have a bad habit and that just breezes by you, and you didn't even, you know, you didn't even know that it was happening because you didn't have that conversation. I think that's super important. Yeah.
I think one of the worst habits, really, that's in the lending field, and that realtors don't know the difference, so they're running around showing homes, is unqualified borrowers running around with pre-approved letters.
Terrible.
It's all over the place. I see it all the time, which is why most of my listing agents have me cross-qual the buyers for their sellers. It's insane. What a lot of people are doing is they pull credit, they take a verbal conversation, say, sounds good. They issue a pre-approval letter because the agent is so anxious to submit the offer that all of a sudden then down the road they're like, oh shoot, I didn't check this or that, and it falls apart in the end. So, you know, with Movement Mortgage's process of fully underwriting our files at the pre-approval stage, I'm collecting all of the documentation down to the T. You know, we're not taking a screenshot of their bank statement or a, you know, like you, I get photographs of all kinds of stuff on a regular basis. And so while that might be fine for me to review, put my underwriter hat on, and issue a pre-approval letter, it's not the same as an underwritten decision. So getting it all in up front, I tell people you might hate me in the beginning, but you're going to love me in the end when once you start packing your boxes. You know, a bad habit that I think buyers have is they don't want to deal with the paperwork until they have a property. And allowing them to do that sets them up for so much frustration later when now they have to pack, now they have escrow disclosures, now they have real estate disclosures, on and they just feel so overwhelmed, and you know, they're going to take it out on the realtor and the loan officer. So you know, just encourage them, hey, it's okay. Yes, I loved your comment on there that said don't stop sending stuff just because you're frustrated with the process, you know.
Yeah.
keep it going, and encourage them. It's a good thing, especially if they're doing it up front. It's a good thing, you know. Go for it. Let's do it. Let's get that loan commitment letter in hand, and then later we can breeze through. So that's my 2 bits.
Yeah, and I think so often, and I know we keep touching on this, but it is so important when you get excited and you get a new client and you don't, maybe you get out of your own, you know, good habits because you have an emotional response, and we're all human, right? We get happy, we get excited, and it's important to remember that if you just rush through, then you're skipping and you're doing yourself a disservice as much as you are that client. And if you say from the beginning, you know, what kind of conversations have you had with a lender? You know, are you pre-approved, or have you gone through the underwriting process? Do you mind if I call your lender? Let's all 3 sit down and have coffee, so that we all know, you know, what's on the table and what's coming. And again, not discussing it from the beginning and then rushing them in the middle. It's very stressful, and it becomes stressful upon you, and then they feel your stress, and then you've added to it instead of taking it away. And giving them that sense of you know, they're going to forget stuff anyway, and they're going to feel unprepared, but there are things that we can do to lessen that stress, and I think a lot of us get away from that even as we get further in our careers. Even if we work with repeat clients, you know, working with people who've gone through a short sale, you sometimes assume, well, they've already gone through the worst, so I don't have to explain anything to them, because they were so wrapped up in the fact that they were losing their house, you know, that going through this situation, you know, now they might, you know, think, oh, well, nothing's as bad as that. you know, and then you forget. You think, oh, well, I've already worked with this client before and we've already discussed this. It's important to treat every single transaction like brand new. And I think you deal with that probably, you know, a lot too, in, you know, dealing with repeat borrowers, and maybe it's a different loan process and you have to start everything from the beginning again.
Right. And, you know, I think it was a big key. If I was a realtor, I would quickly run out and do a glossy trifold, like you said. I've seen some agents have very good presentations of what to expect and some that kind of just wing it. And I know that on my documentation checklist, it also has a do's and don'ts on it. And we have email instructions and we verbally discuss it. But, you know, routinely, I'm shocked. I talked to the client yesterday. She said, I said, well, just as a heads up, you know, the appraisal is going to be ordered. But she goes, oh, yeah, I saw that on your instructions. And I was blown away. I said, oh, she read my instructions. Nobody, they never read it. They don't read the FAQs. But at least if you've provided it, either as a backup email to a conversation or in a glossy or something, at least at the end, they can't come back and say, you never told me.
Yeah, so, and you can also say referred, you can say, hey, let's talk about this. I know we talked about it in the beginning, but don't worry if you've forgotten anything. It's okay if you ask the same question 3 times. I'd rather you ask it 3 times than not at all. Refer to the handout and I'll call you in a couple of hours or something. You know, let's say an issue comes up and you want to touch base with them right away, but you don't want to rush them. You say, take some time. Here's what we're going to be working on. Here's the situation today. If you have, you know, time before we chat, just look through the checklist that I provided with you in the beginning. See if there's any questions on there or answers that we discussed that might be helpful for you. You know, and remind them, because, you know, having a client feeling left out or feeling, you know, I hate saying this word, but it happens. Sometimes they feel betrayed. You know, they feel like we're just out to close this deal and we're not concerned with their emotions, and we're not, you know, and as a buyer or a seller, you know, sometimes they don't want to even tell you that they've forgotten or tell you that they're confused or tell you that they're worried because, you know, because of whatever reason. And so having them, you know, feel like they've been, you know, treated in a certain way goes a long way. And if you've provided that, then you're not at the end going, oh yeah, I'm sorry, by the way. I always say don't be a by the way broker. You know, it means very basically you don't want to be down the road and say, oh yeah, I should have told you about that. That could have happened. Sorry, you know, or fudging through it, because they'll know. They'll see right through that.
Well, clients are worrying about it and their questions are popping in their head pretty much at 11 p.m. when their head hits the pillow. And so if they're really stressed about it, being able to go to their phone and pull up the email you gave them that's answer, they go, okay, oh yeah, I remember she gave me that. Maybe I can at least look at this and this will answer my question. You know, it really, it just helps. It's also a good CYA.
Well, I like the deal breaker conversation too, because you know, on the lending side, because what if something comes up and they say we're not, you know, it could be a deal breaker. You know, I'm trying to think of an example right off the top of my head.
Well, maybe like seller credit, you know.
Yeah, that's a big one, because different loan types have different limits. And different requirements, and yeah, and it's so interesting too. You know, when they've found their dream house, but then a couple of little things pop up on the inspection, and if you haven't discussed that, it's not their, you know, then all of a sudden it's not their dream house anymore, because they've walked in and, you know, from the outside it's like, oh, this is perfect. Oh, but the bathroom is pink. I can't live with that. You know, it's important to have, you know, some conversations about the simple things, as important as it is having conversations about the hard things.
Yep, good stuff.
Perfect. And I think that is it. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. Thank you to Shelley and Movement Mortgage for sponsoring today's webinar, and a huge thank you to Heather for hosting today. Thanks again,
Thank you all
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.